What's up, y'all? This is the Fem Future Podcast where we, you, me, and the audience around us get the opportunity to learn from amazing women curating a better future for themselves and others. I'm your host, Amber Latrice, and today I am joined by a certified life coach. She's a motivational speaker, a facilitator, a trainer, a podcast host in her own right, and founder and CEO of Enough Labs. Miss Dina, how are you doing today?
I am so great and so honored to be with you, Amber. Thank you so much for the invitation. And I can't wait for this conversation.
Me either. I'm so happy to have you. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the podcast. So you and I got the opportunity to connect on so much before we hit record. But for our audience members that haven't had the opportunity to connect with you or get to know you, can you tell them a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. You know, it's so interesting when I hear someone list out all my titles because yes, they're all important, but there's so much more to me, right? So my name is Dina Scippa, founder and CEO of Enough Labs, and I really am on a mission. I'm on a mission to help women and girls around the world fundamentally embrace the belief that they are enough as they are. And this work has been born out of a very long and personal journey of my own struggle to feel confident, struggle to feel good enough. And, you know, the work that I've gotten to do like over the course of a 20-year career, coupled with some personal struggles is what has brought me in this moment today. I just feel so inspired and lifted by the work that I get to do. But I'm also someone who loves to live life on purpose. We were connecting earlier before the show started on our love of travel. Beyond my obsession with visiting new places, and we share that love of discovering new places through food, I also love to dance. I'm a Zumba instructor in my free time. So I'm, you know, I'm a lot of things. I mean, all of the titles, but also, you know, I'm a sister, an auntie, a daughter, you know, of someone who I hope people always feel absolute permission to be free with, to feel courageous, to feel authentic, and mostly feel safe. So I feel like that's me in a nutshell, really quickly. I'm based in Washington, D.C., but constantly feeling like, is this the place for me? Because I'm not going to lie, I think I have some commitment stuff going on and being anywhere for too long, but we'll get into that. But I've definitely always been obsessed with travel and discovering new places. And I've actually traveled to more than 30 countries around the world. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so amazing. That's so amazing. So thank you for letting us know like where you are now, who you are now, what you're doing now. But I want to take a step back into the past. And initially I was going to ask you who you were 18, but I don't know, I'm kind of feeling a pull to 16. So who was Dina at age 16?
Yeah, it's a great question. Like I said, I mean, I created Enough Labs because of something that I've heard said to me a number of times, is that we oftentimes create what we most needed. And I would have to say that at 16, as a young girl growing up in Massachusetts, a very suburban, wealthy town, and someone who was not wealthy, definitely brought on its own array of challenges with my confidence and with my self-esteem, and never quite feeling like I belonged. I grew up at 16. I was a girl who felt deeply insecure with how I looked, with the way my body looked, with the way that I felt like I didn't measure up with other students. Was also battling some real tough challenges in my family, because my dad was struggling, well, not at that point, but he had struggled with drug addiction. And so my parents decided to divorce around 10. And being the oldest, I felt like I had to be the fixer. I had to make sure that I was the one that no one had to worry about. So that meant that I got hyper fixated on always staying busy, trying to be perfect in all the ways, and making sure that I didn't drop a single thing. So I was president of every club and making sure I was super active in my high school and my community, and made sure I had to get all the best grades and be the best friend and be, the responsible oldest child and get a second, and get the job and do all the things. And I think the strategy that for my own survival was stay as busy as possible so that you don't have to feel anything. Because those feelings that I was feeling, I didn't feel like anyone truly understood what I was going through, nor did I feel safe enough to be able to really be honest about what was happening. And I think at 16, you are questioning so much about your identity and your belonging under normal circumstances, but throw in addiction and divorce and challenges with money and, everything that comes along with that. It was definitely a rough time that I was trying to navigate to the best of my ability. What's interesting is that somehow I had the courage to ask my mom, who I now to this day feel so bad that I even did it. But at 16, I was in my French class and the school was organizing a trip to France. And it was like my dream to go there. And I asked my mom, begged her, I was like, is there, you don't have a real concept of like what the real money situation is. I knew we were struggling, but I was like, is there any way that this could happen? And I begged and I pleaded with her. And I even had the audacity to have my French teacher call my mom. My mom said yes. She found a way. I have no idea how she did it. And that was the very first time that I ever traveled outside of the US. I got to see the Tower. I stood on the Champs-Elysees. And I was just like, I saw this opening of like, wow, I could actually envision a life outside of this tiny town of Massachusetts that I don't fit into and never feel like anyone really understood me, to be planted in another country, one of the most beautiful places in the world. I'm like, there's so much more. So, I think it's important to reflect on your story and what's contributed to it, but also to focus on where were those moments that you still were able to catch a glimpse about what's possible. And that France trip was definitely it for me, to be able to reflect on a time that I felt so isolated and so like different, to then be able to see another possibility in that moment was huge.
Wow. Okay. So you've gone from this space of keeping yourself busy, working to essentially be distracted, feeling the pressure of perfectionism, and even having the opportunity to get exposed to what life could be, not knowing that it would be essentially what life would be. How did you get from that young girl that was a perfectionist, but still curious, trying to essentially fix the world and be an answer in that space and circumstance, to the woman you are now, building up other amazing girls and women to walk around with the confidence knowing that they are enough?
Well, it's crazy. When I look back and you ask that question, I look back, I'm like, how did I do it? I have a couple of answers, but it is pretty wild when you look back on your life and you look at where you came from, and at a time when you had so many questions about what might be possible. What I think is always amazing is when you think you have an idea of what your future can be like, and then it blows everything you thought out of the water. Like if I could go back to 16-year-old Dina and say, you have no idea how good it's about to get. Don't get me wrong, there's going to be some bumps along the road, but definitely it gets good. when I was in high school, I was fascinated by international relations. We had this one history teacher who added this course, so I jumped into it. And I was really clear going into college, I went to American University, that I wanted to study international relations. Like at first, I really just wanted to be an ambassador or work for the UN. That was the goal. And then realized that there was so many other opportunities to do good in the world. I was definitely like a fierce activist from an early age. I was, the weirdo in class that was constantly touting about women's rights and feminism, and it's important, and stop making these side comments, and to people rolling their eyes, to, me going to university in Washington, D.C., a place that I now call home and always have in a way, because it felt like the place that I truly belonged. And to be able to be on a college campus and meet such a diverse group of people that I felt like reflected me. I also was able to, join like the National Organization for Women chapter on campus and get involved in student politics and have internships with organizations that were doing really impactful work. And so I felt like it was such an opportunity to like really step into the work and the life that I dreamt could be possible. But I won't lie, like, navigating your career and going to school when you grew up in a context that looked very, very different. There were some bumps along the road. Like I said, I went to American, graduated, worked my butt off at, internships and a second job, and the busyness was still there. And I realized how being on your own actually has you confront a lot of your stuff, and I think as I reflect on my 20s as a 41-year-old woman today, I can see 41. The thing is, though, when you look back, I could see in my 20s how much I was still desperately trying to prove. There was a lot of pleasing in friendships and even relationships. There was a lot of, obsession with needing to prove myself, to feeling like I was good enough to be in these spaces, that I could be chosen, whether it was applying to an internship or going, for my first job, to then applying to graduate school. And so there was just a lot of moments along the way that I was doing all the things, but internally was really struggling with, can I really do it? And what do people think of me? So I think like along the way, I have to say, pretty safely that I spent a lot of time being super preoccupied with what other people thought of me. I was afraid of being judged. I was afraid of, would they find me out? Would people think like, oh, we should have never hired her? So, navigating those feelings of imposter syndrome, but also knowing so clearly, like, wait, I know I could do this if someone just gave me a chance. But like, have you ever gone through a feeling or a period, Amber, where you feel like everyone else has the answers to the test and you're just trying to figure out where the room is?
Okay, like what happened? Did I forget the Scantron or?
And that's what DC felt like being an American. I just felt like everyone had the connections that they needed to get into that like dream job. And I just looked around, I felt like everyone else was taking off. And here I was just trying to like wait for my golden ticket. And I'm not someone who waits for anything to be given to me, but I was just like, how do I even get into spaces? So I was like a natural networker and hustler. And I always knew that I wanted to work on gender issues in the international development space. But that age-old adage of you got to pay your dues. I spent a lot of years paying my dues, having conversations with people, trying to show how serious I was about working on gender equality and women's empowerment. And I worked as a recruiter in international development consulting firms. I worked on proposals. I worked on projects, everything that was like administrative and project management related, and hoping that someone might see that I could do more. Hey, I have a master's it's focused in gender. That's nice. Okay, what about now? I just came back from 4 years in Djibouti. I've done all this amazing work in the gender space. Still no? Cool. And just trying at every job I had to like get people to see me in this different light. Until finally, I was at probably the 5th organization I had worked in my career, and I took a chance. I put forward this proposal to have an in-house gender advisor at the company, which they had never done. They'd always subcontracted that work to other consultants or even other firms. And I said, why are we losing this opportunity to create a niche for ourselves? I think we need to have this expertise in-house. And by the way, I think you should let me do it. I realized that
a gender advisor
is I wanted to be a gender advisor because I wanted
what is that?
Oh, sorry. And so a gender advisor, great question, is someone who advises projects that are being implemented all around the world in developing countries that are, usually get funding by donors. And there can be projects from like agriculture to livestock to climate change to water security to conflict resolution. And my job was to advise projects on how they could better integrate gender considerations into project design. So I was the one going in and conducting assessments and making recommendations on how they could, for example, design a training that would actually encourage more women to participate. I was, looking at opportunities to allocate more grant resources to women. And so what that required was me getting on a plane probably every 6 weeks, because they did say yes to my proposal. And that required me to get on a plane. I was probably traveling for like 3 to 4 weeks every time, every 6 to 8 weeks, in a different country, different time zone, different climate, having conversations with women and girls, asking what their priorities were, asking what they needed. Because the problem with international development, you worked in the humanitarian aid space, is that companies or nonprofits would implement projects, and there was very little engagement in terms of what the community actually needed. And so writ large, it's flawed from the beginning. But if that wasn't happening, they sure as hell weren't asking women and girls about their perspectives inside of it. So I would go out and interview people and produce a report that would offer those recommendations inside. And I did that work for 15 years.
Wow.
And it was incredible. It was incredible work. But I won't sugarcoat it, because while it was incredible work and it gave me such a strong sense of purpose and clarity around what I had worked so hard to get into, it also felt like I was the lone voice screaming into the ether of how important women's empowerment was to advance these development goals. And I felt like I was constantly trying to campaign for the right thing to do. And so when I look back to when I first made that proposal to have the first gender advisor in that company, that was my first in for that dream job I wanted. After tirelessly networking and reaching out for anyone who would have a coffee with me, walk with me to the train, just picking their brain. And it was like, I actually had to create the opportunity myself and advocate for it, because no one was going to hand it to me. So I went to places like Afghanistan and Mali and South Sudan and Peru and Jordan. Fiji was one of my favorites, Rwanda, and leading and contributing to all of these different projects and different studies. And I lost count. I mean, I know that I've spoken to hundreds of women and girls around the world. And I just realized I got to a point where I was like, this is great, but looking around like, is that all there is? Because this was the dream job and I was doing it. And then I reached the point where I was like, low key, I'm kind of getting bored though. Not that I didn't want to work in that space, but I was like, this can't be all there is. I'm wanting more. And I had to get clear about why I wanted more and what was the obsession with that. I was going through a really tough time, actually, with my, at that point, husband, and we just recently got divorced. So I was dealing with that.
Sorry to hear that, if that's or congratulations, whichever way it needs to go.
It depends on the day that you ask me. But the thing, what's so interesting is that I had this idea to do something radically different in my career, just at the same time that I was questioning everything in my marriage.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so I got clear that I had definitely been on this track of just being busy all the time, to not really deal or feel with what I was really going through. And so it was like, you could do that with a high-paced career, fast deadline,
Wow.
the pressure of the deadlines, and there's always something due, and then trying to be social with friends and trying to navigate, the struggles of a marriage and starting a family, and there's all of these things at play. It allows you for the perfect breeding ground to never actually get in touch with who you are and what you need. So it's a very long-winded answer to say that I've gone through all of these like different stages of my journey to, I oftentimes say I had to travel the world to find me. When I knew everything she needed, everything I needed was within. I kept getting closer and closer to the person, to the woman I knew I was destined to become, the more I let go of these expectations of what I thought people needed to see from me. Or, and when I stopped holding on to this belief that I needed to be impressive all the time, that I needed to be pleasing at all costs and perfect. So really all of this, my own personal development journey, was what birthed Enough Labs. Because I thought, if I can do this incredible work internationally, and I'm waiting on leadership to do the right thing, why do I have to keep waiting? Why can't I step into that leadership role? So I gave myself the title of founder and CEO of Enough Labs.
Come on.
Because I created it, because I said so. And I wanted my voice to be one of the voices in a global movement that's talking about empowerment and equality and inclusion, but in a way that takes away this like toxic positivity slant of it all.
That part.
Like, I'm just so like, I'm obviously a certified life coach, but that title doesn't even fit. It doesn't feel right. Because really what I want to call myself is a movement builder. Because this is a movement. This is a movement. This is a movement. I am curating a global movement on the conversation of enoughness. Because if anything has taught me anything in this journey that I call life, with my own experiences of struggling with confidence and the way I see myself, and whether I have been able to let go of the weight of perfectionism and people pleasing to finally embrace that I'm enough, I've realized that women across the globe are having the same conversation with themselves. But if I'm honest, I don't feel like we're talking about it enough, no pun intended. Like, I just feel like there's so many women who are shrouded in shame and secrecy, unwilling to have the conversation that it's like, no, I'm not fine. I'm not. I'm actually really struggling. And I think if we were able to let the veil down and be honest with what was actually occurring within, we might be able to quiet the noise inside of us to actually feel something different. And then Amber, if every woman on the planet actually got honest and authentic with what she really wanted, how different would this place be?
Listen, if only a few of us did it. Oh my gosh.
That's it. So I know there was a long way to answer the question, but there's a lot of life packed in between 16 and 41. And here's the exciting part. I'm still learning. Come
on. It's not done.
Not at all. I always say I'm just getting started.
There is so much here. My mind. Okay. Where do we begin? Where do we begin? Oh man. Okay. So this could literally have multiple parts to this episode so easily, but I'm going to try and keep it concise.
Yep.
Okay. Let's stick with Oh, geez. Okay. Let's jump. We'll jump back and then hopefully we'll have time to come back for a second question.
Sure.
So let's jump back to the younger you that is still in her 20s, trying to please people, still operating in that space. What advice would you have for an audience member that's trying to figure out how to overcome that and truly begin to kind of embody the reality that they are enough?
Yeah. I think your 20s are really tough, objectively. I think you're trying to sort out your place in the world, and there's so much internalized pressure that you want all of the hard work to pay off. So there's that fierce chase going on in your 20s that I got to get there. I got to get there. I got to keep climbing. And whether it's the six-figure salary that you're chasing or the senior title or the recognition, completing the master's or the PhD or getting the family and 2.5 kids with the dog, we're all chasing a feeling. And so I really would say to someone who's struggling to feel like they are good enough or struggling to just be okay with where they are in that moment, is do everything you can to stop comparing yourself to everyone else's story. This idea that I hear from women all the time that say, well, I just don't want to be the one that's left behind. I don't want to be the last blank. So in the constant chase of, I have to get ahead, I can't be the one, I don't want to be left behind, the obsession with getting the accolades and the accomplishments, my question to you would be, why? Why is it so important? Because if you're doing it from a place that you want to be impressive, that you want people to give you that dopamine hit of like, wow, you did that? It all comes from this place that we feel like if we do this thing, then I'll matter. Then I'll be important. Then I'll feel chosen. Then I will get confirmation that I'm good enough. But let me tell you, the chase for all of these things is not going to get you closer to that feeling. Because what I've found in my illustrious 41 years on the planet is that it's for a lot of us. I don't want to speak for everyone. I don't like, blanket statements, but it's never enough. You reach the PhD and you're like, now what? I don't even have a challenge. I want to get married. Okay, you got married. Well, now I'm just married. What's next? You're going to plateau. You're going to plateau because you've been chasing the idea that a feeling is attached to the thing that once you accomplish, you'll feel whatever you're looking for. Chosen, valued, important, enough. Whereas what would it look like if you actually just gave that to yourself now and lived life on your terms with the dreams that actually matter to you instead of fulfilling other people's expectations of you? That's the advice I would give. More questions, more questions rather than advice, but I am a coach, so I live in the questions.
Right? Like what? Okay. So then, I guess my follow-up question, because I don't even think I can allow myself to just like sit with what was just dropped. Like I can't even that's going to take me down a whole nother level. Like I was ready to like throw the laptop. Like, okay, coming back. So for the woman that is connecting to what you just said, I guess my next question would be how? What does it look like to actually do that?
Yeah. So I am a coach and I work in an industry where a lot of people claim to know, here's the 5 steps you need to do to get there. I don't want to burst anyone's bubble, but that's not who I am.
Come on.
I just think, okay, so I heard, do you know who Ian Van Zant is?
Yes.
Okay. So I heard her say once, how are you going to keep asking other people for directions to places that they've never been?
Ooh.
And so if someone was listening to this and resonated with what I just said and asked me how to do it, it actually wouldn't make sense because you are the blueprint for your life. You're the one who has the insight and the expertise in order to live your life, your unique DNA and makeup and story and circumstances and what you do with that. But I think what's important is getting still enough and quiet enough to really tap into what is it that I want that will let me fully release this obsession with searching for evidence that I'm not good enough. So I feel like we are hardwired oftentimes as women or people who are socialized as women to feel like we walk through the world trying to gather up that evidence of, see, that person said no to me on a date. See, I didn't get chosen for that job. See, I didn't get into that school. And what you choose to focus on reinforces your belief about yourself. So I think really, like, if I had to put it into a how, which, as I said, I'm not that person, but I would just really get clear on what am I choosing to give energy to? Am I choosing to give energy to all the reasons that I'm not? Or am I choosing to give energy to the things that I am? Which reinforces your enoughness and your worthiness all day long. Why are you going to give other people power over who you are at your core? Oh, because that school didn't accept you, that then means they have dominion over who you are and what you get to do? Do you know how many rejections I've gone through in my life, but more specifically since I started this business? If I laid down every time someone said no to me, I would not be having this interview with you today. And I think just like getting comfortable with the no's, because I think like really, I think as women, oftentimes we feel like no is the worst thing we want to hear. And so it stops us from trying, or even if we do, we're not even sure if we can handle it. But the no's I've actually learned, and I wish I knew this, earlier in my 20s, is that the no's are actually the universe, God, spirit, whatever you believe in, that is actually making room for what you're supposed to be aligned with. Instead of getting hyper focused on the things or the people or the places that were a no for you, be a yes to you. Oh, because so often we as women, I think, are looking for validation outside of ourselves in order to confirm what we want to make sure that the world sees in us. And so if we attach ourselves to the no, there's no way that we can be a yes for us. We can't be a yes for our self-care and our stillness and our dreams and the things that we want to do that scare us. I think it's a choice of what we choose to focus on.
Whew. Well, listen, there's no great way to transition from that. But I'm gonna throw the transition out there anyway. You took us to the present. We took a leap into the past. You brought us back. Yeah, blew all of our minds. So let's take a leap into the future. If you had a chance to have a conversation with your 100-year-old self, what do you hope she'll tell you about the life you lived?
First of all, I hope and pray I'll make it to 100, because that would be so beautiful.
Yes.
And I hope that she'll tell me, or if I was able to have a conversation with her, I would hope that she would tell me that I did everything possible to live the life that I dreamed of. That I had zero regrets, and that I think the way my 41-year-old self would go back and try to talk to my 16-year-old self, like, you have no idea how good it's about to get. I wouldn't want all of the things. I wouldn't want all of the secrets, because I do love being surprised. But I would say that I would hope that she would say to me the same thing that I would tell my 16-year-old self right now, is that you have no idea how good it's about to get. And just trust that you're on the right path and that you've showed up and that there's no more hard work that needs to be put in, that you're building it and it's happening. And I will say one last thing that I hope she would tell me, is that I was loved in the way that I deserve to be loved.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ooh.
That I didn't have to abandon myself or reject my truest desires or act like they didn't matter, because there's someone out there who was going to love me to the depth of passion and everything that I desire. So yeah.
Wow. Oh, so beautiful.
Thank you.
Wow. You have dropped so many gems. But if there was, as we close, if there was any final advice that you'd have for myself or any other audience member that's working to intentionally curate a better future for themselves and others, what advice would that be?
I would say don't get caught up in thinking that you need to make the right choice. Like, trust the path that you're on. Life is not linear. I went into, my 20s thinking I had to follow this like really clear path so that it would all make sense. And it's okay if it doesn't make sense. Like you get to have the permission that surprises and, like there's things that you're not going to be able to anticipate. There is no right or wrong choice. There's just the choice that you've made. And you adjust to whatever that is. And then if it doesn't work, you choose again. But you get to have the permission that life doesn't have to be this like predictable cookie cutter, cut and paste formula, that you get to say, I feel like moving to Mexico City now.
Come on.
I get to give myself permission to live life loud and take up space and on purpose, because why not? Whatever doesn't serve you, just clear the path.
Wow.
That would be my advice.
So amazing. So amazing. Thank you so much.
You're so
welcome. For coming on
welcome.
the podcast. Oh my gosh. For any other audience member, and I imagine that there will be a lot of them, that want to continue the conversation, get some coaching, any and all of the above, can you please tell them where they can find you?
Absolutely. So, there's my website that you can learn all about me, my story, and the services I provide at www.enoughlabs.com. You can find me on Instagram at Enough Labs and also on LinkedIn, Dina Scippa, founder and CEO of Enough Labs. And I am so interested in talking to as many people as possible. So grab some time on my calendar. We can chit chat, just talk through some of the stuff that you might be wanting to navigate. I offer one-on-one and group coaching offerings. Group coaching is something I'm really looking to expand upon. So it's really more demand driven in this moment, but also looking to partner with companies and do more leadership coaching inside within teams to really help catapult and catalyze the leadership, pipeline that's within companies to be more representative, inclusive, and equitable. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, thank you again for being
so
on the
welcome.
pod.
You're so welcome. Thanking you for having me. Thanks for letting me share my story.
Of course, of course. And to everyone tuning in, thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, let's continue to engage, encourage, and support each other as we work together to curate a FEM future.